How lovely. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great fireside chat we just had, and I'm very, very pleased, and what a fantastic thank you to the gentlemen. Now we're going to stay with that format of the fireside chat and invite Professor Christopher Buttigieg, Chief Supervision Officer of MFSA, and Dan Hanquist, Deputy Director of the Helsinki Geoeconomics School, to come for a fireside chat titled Geoeconomics and the Future of Finance, Navigating Power, Policy and Regulations. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together.
Please. Where's we need the clicker for the slides. Thank you. Okay. Normally, for a fireside chat, you don't get slides, but this is a subject that is currently developing, and therefore I agreed with Dan that we would have some slides to help the audience understand the flow and understand better the subject. Geoeconomics is all about politics, economics, finance, and how the world is developing and how power is developing within the world. And to the contrary of what was brought to the floor by the previous fireside chat, which concluded that size doesn't matter, in geoeconomics, size does matter. And the idea of having this panel session as part of the FinanceMalta event was, and hopefully we will succeed, to introduce this subject to the financial services industry here in Malta. I came across this subject around 6 months ago. I was invited by a friend of mine, Jens, who is the director of Helsinki Geoeconomics, to attend the annual Geoeconomics event. It was very interesting in the sense of how the actions being taken, particularly in the United States, are having an impact on economies across the globe, but also on the financial system. And as a result of that, I suggested that it would be a good idea to have this session. And for the session, we've got Dan. Dan is the Deputy Director of Helsinki Geoeconomics. He's a lawyer by profession who has worked in London in the financial industry for a number of years. He's also a former officer of the Swedish Army and also a poet. Now, in relation to poetry, I've tried my poems. But to the contrary of Dan, it has failed completely. In fact, Bernice, my wife, has told me, listen, find another hobby, which I have tried. But Dan has been successful there as well. So Dan, starting with the very basics, how would you define geoeconomics?
I think that's a good question. It's a very important question for academics because they need to ensure careers and budgets. But I think for the rest of us, I think most of you will probably have an intuitive understanding of what geoeconomics is, but it's both a way of thinking about the world and a way of acting in the world, you might say. This is the European Council of Foreign Affairs. They've made a decent attempt at sort of defining this, and I think especially the second paragraph there, geoeconomics is an emerging field that seeks to understand the interplay of economics and geopolitics, for example, in trade, technology, finance, infrastructure, energy, and access to critical raw materials. I think that's pretty much what we're talking about. And to understand this, I think we need to operate two different logics. Most of us have spent most of our professional lives in the economic logic, where utility maximization has been the basic principle. It aims to increase welfare. We live in a win-win world, and utility maximization is a means to an end, and that end is to maximize citizen welfare. And we thought that was all there was to it. Now, of course, it's not all that there is to it. Citizen welfare, citizen wealth can also be a means to an end. It's really a mercantilist idea. So a rich population is like a rich flock of sheep you can fleece to maximize state power. That's a completely different logic. That's a political logic, which tends to operate from a sort of zero-sum perspective. I'm not saying that the economic logic has gone away, but it's insufficient to understand where we are now, or maybe where we've always been. But now we need to take the political logic seriously and see how these two logics interact. And one way of perhaps helping us to get our heads around that is to change how we think about war and conflict. Traditionally, we've operated with a binary idea. We are either at war or at peace, and that's a clear line. When we cross that line, we move from one state to another, and most of our laws and constitutions, our systems are built on this binary difference between war and peace. Now, you will all have heard about hybrid war. That's an attempt to get away from this binary model. I don't like it because hybridity really implies that there still are two things that somehow get mixed, but you can still identify the two things mixing. A third option has been to talk about unpeace. So we move from war into unpeace and then into peace. All those three conceptions, I think, suffer from the same weakness. They're all digital. The idea is that we can determine that we're in one state or another. I think that's completely wrong. I think we should operate with a scalar model. There are no strict lines. We don't really know when we're at war or at peace. We're probably never at peace in the ideal sense. There's a constant competition, and states will use a variety of instruments to do that. They will escalate and de-escalate using military power, market access, all those things. And trying to understand how this world operates, we can think of the state, the market, and the firms. All three are, in a way, agents or actors in a geoeconomic world. The state will try to instrumentalize, weaponize the market and firms, and the other way around. Firms will seek alliances with states, protection from states, will play one state out against another, and the market, which is a combination of firms, of course, has its own power. And I think one way of conceptualizing geoeconomics is to see it as the intersection of these three arenas, you might say. Of course, the distinction between the state, the market, and the firm are all porous, and they change over time. What does the state do? What does the firm do? And what do the firms do in-house? And what do they outsource in the market? And those distinctions, those delimitations are instrumentalized themselves. And in Helsinki, we try to sort of conceptualize this in what we hope is a helpful way. So if you want to build geoeconomic capability, and this goes for firms and states, we basically find ourselves that we have an exposure to these risks. And what we want to achieve is to enhance our agency so we can address whatever it is we're facing. And many people now, many firms and many states struggle to survive. That's sort of, perhaps even the end goal for many. Thinking through geoeconomics, taking these issues on board, we want to push states and firms to actually thrive. It's true, these issues are strategic, they're existential for both firms and states, but merely surviving is not really where we want to be. We want to thrive. And it is possible to thrive. Every crisis closes off some opportunities but open up new opportunities. So thriving is something we want to foster. But you can progress even further than that and actually drive the development. But tech platforms have driven the development. States drive development. They sort of create the preconditions for their own actions. I think that sort of summarizes what we're about in Geoeconomics.
You were a lawyer in London for a number of years. You've got experience with European law, and the European Union is a very powerful bloc. All right, losing its influence as time goes by, but it's still a very powerful bloc. Now, one of the ways Europe tries to exert its influence is through its regulation and access to its single market. And the concept of equivalence. Is equivalence a tool, a geoeconomic tool?
Yes, I should say it can be. And we can sort of look at how states, what sort of instruments do states have. I mean, traditionally, we've tended to, again, on this binary model, say we have kinetic, diplomatic, kinetic as in violence, instruments, and we have economic instruments, and they serve different purposes. Clean way. Now, that is completely wrong, of course, because they can be used for a variety of purposes. But Trump is using tariffs not to necessarily just to protect US industry, but also really as a political instrument, as sanctions. So there's a mix of instruments that can be used for a variety of purposes, and this is a selection of instruments. I think economic sanctions, economic assistance, those things you would be familiar with, financial monetary policy, lawfare, which I will talk to. I think that's where the EU is active. Trade policy, obviously, investment policy, technology. We're talking about AI a lot, and the AI Act, migration. All these things are a mix. It's a toolbox, if you like, to use a trendy word. And financial regulation in the EU, I think, has been used geoeconomically. So take, for example, a recent change in the banking rules, which require third-party banks to provide core banking services, not just cross-border, but from establishments in the EU. Now, that will enhance EU control over what those banks do in the union, and it's also a bit of a threshold for competition from third party or third state banks. That's one example. We've had the insurance and reinsurance bans on marine vessels and aircraft directed against Russia. We've had transaction bans. This goes back a long time. You may remember from your history books that Bismarck introduced the Lombardverbot, where he prohibited Russian state debt as collateral for the Reichsbank, for instance. And we've seen that now access to the US capital market is an instrument the US has used. We've used it against Russia, and I think in these areas now, equivalence is clearly one of the instruments. We've recently seen changes in the European infrastructure market regulation dealing with derivatives clearing. It's long been an irritant that so much euro-denominated instruments are cleared in London. And now we have a rule which requires European institutions subject to the clearing obligation to clear at least some of their derivatives through European authorized CCPs. I think this is clearly a geoeconomic instrument. I don't think this has any purely economic or stability purposes. This is politics through economic means. And we have a number of rules which restrict the provision of service. Again, equivalence is an instrument to regulate the provision of services.
Which takes me to the next question. Malta is a small state, right? Geoeconomics in the context of small states, can small states exercise influence?
We hope so. I mean, someone said, I don't remember who it was, but it was someone important who said that Europe consists of two types of states. Small states and states who have yet to realize that they are small states. So this is a problem for all of us, and I think there are things we can do. Size matters, but not as much as some people think, and it really depends on how you use your size, I'd say. So implications for small states. I think we should think in terms of resilience. Now, resilience is not the same thing as robustness. This is a model for thinking about resilience. It's developed originally for firms, but I think it's equally applicable to states, especially small states. And we can talk about resilience as being based on a prior knowledge base. We want to grow the knowledge base. On the basis of that, we can anticipate development. So there are really two kinds of action we can take. We have sort of a cognitive side and a behavioral side, or an action side. So we observe, we identify, and we prepare. And observe and identify, that's very much what we do in Helsinki, try to develop ways of doing forecasting and trying to understand how things work. And then, of course, when things do happen, there's a psychological threshold to pass. You have to accept that something has happened. I think that's where Europe is struggling at the moment. It did happen. We have to accept it, and we need to develop and implement various solutions. So acceptance is the cognitive action, and the solutions, that's the behavioral action. Now, once we survive, there's a connection here, and once we've survived, we want to thrive, so we need to change, and that requires reflection and learning. Again, that's very much what we do in Helsinki. And all this requires available resources, physical resources, money, but also social resources like education, skills. We talked about skills earlier. And we need to allocate power and responsibility in a productive way. And all this sort of is then fed back into the prior knowledge base, which makes us put us in a better position to anticipate and prepare.
Next steps, what are we going to see in this area?
Well, actually, I'd like to sort of reconnect to the agenda here, and a lot of the stuff that we heard in the last session, because more specifically, I think what small states can do, and what Malta seems to be doing, is in general, you can sort of seek shelter behind larger states or the EU, you form alliances, you create optionality, you try to find in what way are you strategically indispensable. Those are sort of general considerations. In technology, there are two ways to encourage innovation. Top down, with state money. Again, small states can work together or within the EU if you're a member of the EU, and that's probably most suitable for reasonably established or proven technologies. You can also work from the bottom up with open capital markets, intelligent use of retail money. I think there's a lot to do with, we can do much more with retail investors. And also, equally important, institutional innovation. So an all-government approach and all society approach. And again, I think, as we heard in the previous session, Malta is doing that. And on these points, I think small size is actually a bit of an upside.
Very good. So we've discussed general definition on the European side, small states in Malta. What are you seeing next in geoeconomics? So what are the next steps?
If we look at sort of finance, if we limit ourselves to finance, I think we'll see, certainly from the EU, I think it will happen. If we take the instruments law for financial monetary policy, I think we'll see various rules on market access. You can have many ways of limiting or modulating market access, establishment requirements, sort of listing requirements, transaction tax, all those things. I think we'll see more of that. The EU and states will try to control who's active in that market. And doing it, I think we'll see things to do with position maintenance and how to retain capital. So you might have various reporting requirements. You might have holding requirements. Foreigners are not allowed to divest within certain time periods. We may have the discriminatory taxes, all those things. We might see manipulation of capital adequacy and solvency risk weights to encourage particular. We see that already in the regulation for long-term European investment funds, where the capital requirement systems are used to channel investments into preferred infrastructure. And we will see various exit rules, some sort of exit tax, for instance. The Trump administration has entertained that. We might do the same. Minimum holding time requirements and all that stuff. So I think there will be a lot of things that can be used in these terms for geoeconomic purposes, and I think we should look at them. And I think they're also sort of general instruments, not just limited to the financial markets. Like we will see more subsidies. We might see a weaponization of anti-dumping and merger control rules. Public procurement is going to be instrumentalized for these purposes. Data protection, obviously, AI. The ESG system, I think, we will have to look at that and see how we can use it. And we might end up with outbound investment screening.
Thank you very much, Dan. So this is the how we've managed to summarize a very complex topic in 20 minutes. However, there will be more that will be distributed in this area. As you might be aware, earlier on this year, we launched a journal at MFSA, the Journal of the Financial Supervisors Academy. And one of the next volume will definitely include an article on this subject. Which is a subject which is evolving at a very fast pace, particularly given what's happening in the world stage. So thank you very much, Dan, and thanks to all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Money-based business is a powerful solution for local and international businesses, powered by an award-winning technology. Manage all your company finances from a single platform. Our promise is to open your business account within 48 hours. Create multiple wallets and set payment approval flows for different users. Make global payments. And manage your company's liquidity via a wide range of investments, including bonds, treasury bills, funds, stocks, and ETFs on 40 exchanges. Our real-time reporting helps you save time so you can focus on running your business. As always, we support you 7 days a week with our ISO-certified human customer service team by phone or live chat. Apply now on moneybase.com.